welcome back to my channel. The fall season is officially upon us, y'all. So I wanted to get in the mood and put on some of this fallish cardigan and my plaid pants to get into this like back to school mood, even though I don't remember the last time I was back to school. It's been like way too long. Do you guys like my bangs? It's growing out. I rescued it. If you haven't seen my last video, I epic failed on cutting my bangs for the first time. But thankfully, time heals, guys. So it grew and now it looks semi-decent. Anyway, you can watch the video. Hi, so I want to check in briefly and talk about the movie Parasite. I mean, it is the most hyped movie of the past year, especially being not just an Asian film, but also a Korean film in the Korean language. It's a big deal, especially for the Koreans represent. They sweeped all the awards, including the Oscars, etc., etc. For me though, I'm not a huge fan of dark films, so I just took my time. I didn't go out of my way to watch the film, and especially when quarantine hit, right? The movie theaters closed, so lost my chance there. But when I was flying, I saw that Parasite was on one of the movies on American Airlines. So I decided, why not? I'm on this 5-6 hour flight, so I might as well just pop this in and see what it's about. By the way, spoiler alert, I will talk about this film in detail, so if you haven't watched the movie yet, skip over. So first of all, I really did enjoy the cinematography and the plot twist. Like that was really epic. And I think I read somewhere that the director said when the ex-maid rings the bell, that's when a movie starts. And yeah, because before that it was just like any other Korean movie, like the forgery or like crime, the poor and the rich. Like it's not a theme that's new to the Korean movie industry. It's very thoroughly portrayed and covered within Korean cinema. But when that plot twist happened, I was like, whoa, this is like brilliant. My favorite scene during the movie has to be the poor family's walk back home after the storm or during the storm. And I just loved the whole trek, the journey from the rich house going down and down and down and down and down, and they're at their place, which is like a half basement. It is just the story of the common people and the things that they have to do to make them ends meet. And with this movie, they portrayed it like they're basically using the resources of the rich to sustain and survive, which is a crime, but are they criminals? Isn't this justified? And I think he did a really good job of like neutralizing the good and evil of each character. So the rich, I mean, they're so rich and but they're saying all these demeaning things about the people that work for them, and they just put on a face in front of them, but in the back, they just know that they're better and they're higher and they're superior. And it really portrayed this notion that no one can win. If you're poor, no one can win. Everyone is out to get each other, right? It honestly is a very accurate portrayal. I mean, it is so nuanced, and I mean, it's a movie, it's a film, but I feel like the themes that were played between the poor and the rich, and just like the sense of inferiority, like you just feel like you're inferior if you are a minority in Korea. So I'm talking about being a woman, being young, being a non-rich income earning citizen. And as I was watching the movie, I just got flashbacks of these things that I would pick up while walking around Korea or working there or living there, interacting with the people there. And sadly and unfortunately, the word is dehumanization. That is such a depressing word, but there's no better way to put it. Like when I was talking about the subway smell. So there's a handful of subway lines in Korea. It basically hits every block of Seoul, the city. Korea, by the way, has a phenomenal transportation system. Like I have to give it to them. It's so cheap. One of the years I was not living in Seoul, but kind of in the burbs, which is Incheon, is close to like the airport. And that number one line, I would ride that line to go into Seoul to go to work every morning. And there were a lot of like the elderly and people who were just selling things, and it was obviously illegal, but there were these people who were just selling random things. And there was like a smell where, I mean, they're older people, right? Like the elderly and like seafood and like, you know, just all of that. And I was just brought back to that when I was watching this movie. I want to start off by saying that I feel very fortunate to have gone to UCLA in Los Angeles in a very liberal environment where people are open-minded, where people are accepting of people's differences instead of counting it as something that is to be looked down upon or to disagree, especially when it's someone's identity. And that's kind of where my world was based before I went to Korea. And I actually moved out there thinking in my head that I'm actually really Korean.
I'm able to read, speak, and write fluently in Korean.
Though I was raised in the States, I went to school here, I felt like I was really Korean. So when I went, I think I was very excited and optimistic to get a deep dive into my culture and my heritage. But as I worked and lived there for the 3 years that I did, I picked up on really negative aspects of being in a homogeneous society. I also shook my first months in Korea just sitting, and all the girls looked the same. All the girls had big eyes, right? Many which I believe were from the result of plastic surgery. And they have pink and red lips. Really similar styles. It's really hard to stand out in Korea. It takes a lot of courage to stand out in Korea. It takes a lot of courage to be yourself in Korea, especially if that means you're a little bit more eccentric or you're a little bit more of this and that than the norm. I have to admit that I am not your everyday Korean gal. I am very outspoken. I am very colorful, not just in my style, but also in the way that I express myself and in the way that I carry myself. And in the back of my mind, whenever I would experience certain things that really it really turned me off, or like turn me off as in I felt like I was taken advantage of because I was young, and
Like you just feel like you're inferior if you're a minority in Korea.
it was such a weird dichotomy because I
I'm able to read, speak, and write fluently in Korean. I felt like I was really Korean. I'm actually really Korean. And that's just who I am.
you know, you see the K-dramas and you watch K-pop music videos and you see the flash and you see the fun and the fashion and everything, but that is such a small fragment of what Korea is made of. Anyway, enjoy the K-dramas as they are, enjoy those glam K-pop music videos as they are, but don't accept that as a depiction of Korea because it is so far from that. Let me tell you a story. So there's a K-drama that did really, really well back in 2014 called Misaeng. It's basically about the office life of Korea. Very typical, characters very believable. It did super well because people related to it so much. Yeah, I remember it was super hyped up in 2014, so I watched it. And from the first episode, I kid you not, It was so depressing. Basically, this guy who started his job gets bullied. But it's not even intentional bullying, it's so passive aggressive. But that's literally the work culture of Korea, so it's real. Anyway, after that first episode, I was like, I don't know why people think this is so good. I'm not gonna watch this. So I put it off. I put it on the shelf for years. And I experienced Korea. I worked there for 3 years. I basically lived through that Misaeng life. I lived through the ups and downs of what those guys experienced. Not to the extremes, perhaps, but there were definitely relatable moments there. So this is another spoiler. If you haven't seen it, skip ahead. So there's a character. He's super happy, jolly guy, just, wanting to have a good time, super stylish, has this like really eccentric hair, and he just loves it, and he's just having the time of his life, and he changes, man. And it broke my heart because I so resonated with this character. This guy, he ends up with a horrible boss, a horrible boss, a toxic boss. And he tries to keep positive and even tries to get back at him. But dude, eventually, he just... Because the thing is, yes, it's easy for people to say you can just quit in Korea, but it's a hard life. The competition is so real there because it's a small country. And that's why people are on this ladder of building credentials and degrees and diplomas and to get into the best companies, but the best companies are very limited in Korea. The culture promotes a one-track road to success, which is
work your ass off before college, ace the SAT of Korea, get into one of the top schools in Korea, and go work at Samsung, which is the biggest company in Korea.
Yes, it's changing. The young generation, I feel like they're chasing their dreams more so than, for example, my parents' generation. They were born right out of the Korean War, so a lot of poverty, a lot of starvation. Living out your dream, chasing your dream was a luxury. And 2020, here we are. That luxury of chasing dreams in Korea is more of a commonality now, thankfully. But there's still a lot that needs to be done. Anyway, this was the most memorable scene for me, the whole drama. So I remember he walks in to work in the morning and he's usually just super fun, cracking jokes even though no one's listening to him. And this poor guy, he comes into work one day and he lost his plaid shirts, he lost his patterns, he lost his funky haircut. And he was just a normal, boring dude in a normal suit, normal haircut. And his face, it was just so stoic. He lost the charm, he lost the personality. And it was such a depiction of your loss of personality and basically your soul, to be honest. Thank you, Parasite and director Bong Joon-ho, for helping me to process the 3 years of Korea. It's still going. And I do want to make more videos about my experience in Korea, what I learned, the people I met there, etc. That's all to say that I don't regret going to Korea. Those 3 years were transforming. I really grew into myself and learned so much. Yeah, maybe one of these days I'll do a full Korean spoken video if you guys are down for it. If you want it, comment down below.